Please be aware that much of what is said in this video is pulled verbatim from multiple credible sources, cited below and at the end of the video. Ad Reinhardt was a prominent American abstract artist, writer, critic, and educator. Although commonly associated with the abstract expressionists, his work had its own origins in geometric abstraction, and increasingly seeking to purify his paintings of everything he saw as extraneous to art, he rejected the movement's expressionism. The focus of the abstract expressionists was to reject modeling their work on popular culture and the mass communications media for their imagery and techniques of presentation. Although Reinhardt was in turn rejected by many of his peers, he was later hailed as a prophet by the minimalists. In this video, I will discuss his black paintings, which occupied him from 1954 until his death. They are regarded as his crowning achievement, although the many cartoons he created that made fun of the art world brought him additional fame as a wry commentator. Jackson Pollock and Ad Reinhardt, both abstract expressionists, seemed determined to test the expressionist abstract modes they inherited and to redefine them in valid contemporary terms. Pollock redefined this by his wide inclusion of past styles in a fragmentary human subject matter. Reinhardt, inversely, by insisting on sharply restricted pictorial means and an uncompromising abstraction. Although fond of straying from tradition, Reinhardt did draw the occasional inspiration from others. Mondrian was perhaps the greatest single influence, coming to New York in 1938 and building a following among such artists as Bolotsky, Glarner, and Diller. Indirectly, his purity of style and example of dedication affected artists as diverse as Holty and Reinhardt himself. More than any other artist of his generation, Reinhardt had proven prophetic of the cool and abstract painting of the 60s. As early as 1963, he was seen as a progenitor of what was soon to become known as minimalism, and by 1965 or 1966, Reinhardt's generative impact on it was touted to such an extent that even some sympathetic critics felt the need to counter this notion with a disclaimer, arguing that he had no direct impact on the minimalist aesthetic. He was, however, himself staunchly not a minimalist. In 1960, around the time the new generation began appearing on the New York scene, Ad Reinhardt had started to make the 60 by 60 inch black paintings that would occupy him almost exclusively until his death in 1967. In 1952, he had begun making geometrically composed, symmetrical, monochromatic paintings in either red or blue. In 1954, he reduced his palette to shades of black only. With the further reduction of variable, the adoption in 1960 of the 5-foot square format, each painting divided into a 9-square grid, his painting entered its definitive phase. He pre-planned every painting like a madman. Everything, he said, where to begin and where to end, should be worked out in the mind beforehand. His works are reductions of chromatic expression to near invisibility. His segmented compositional grids are so dark and even in emphasis that distinctions of form and color require the most intense scrutiny. The almost imperceptible movement the eye is allowed from one structure of geometric shapes to another, and the shifts from faint coloration to its absence, reconstitute in quintessential expressive form ideas of change, stability, and activity at the heart of much significant contemporary expression. Reinhardt's reductive means and uncompromising severity of his impassive icons, with their painstakingly worked surfaces, are the most extreme example of purity in contemporary American painting. He called them the ultimate paintings. He didn't see them as the end of painting, but rather the final extreme that purist expressionist painting could reach. They were a philosophical rebuke directed at the unduly hectic, untidy, and for Reinhardt, certainly shallow action painting, which he so often publicly derided and which had then reached a peak of popularity under the leadership of Jackson Pollock and the other gestural abstractionists of the New York school. He likewise felt alienated from the grandiose but similarly subtle works of the color field painters such as Rothko, Still, and Newman. Reinhardt called his paintings neutral, despite them being anything but. They weren't lightless, nor black, nor colorless, nor formless, nor timeless. Take, for instance, abstract painting from 1963, which had an image of a Greek cross carefully hidden in it, only giving away the suggestion of its inner luminosity after close and prolonged inspection. Creating the black paintings were a ritualistic obsession for him. As he moved further and further away from action painting, he leaned more into the single-minded practices of Eastern religions and traditions. Reinhardt felt that art should be divorced from everyday life, and he viewed art making as pure, disinterested, and an ethical pursuit. In his work, 12 Rules for a New Academy, he says this: "Do not design, for design is everywhere. Avoid colors, for colors blind. Ignore time, for there is no ancient or modern, no past or future in art. A work of art is always present. Use no object, no subject, no matter, no symbols, images or signs, nor pleasure or pain. No mindless working or mindless non-working. No chess playing." Thank you.